Well, welcome back, everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. Happy fall. Can you believe it? We are back together. I've missed you guys. We took a little 2-month hiatus, and it was kind of fun to do the reruns. And I even had someone on social media this morning say, Linda, I'm so glad you've got your new fall episode. I've watched every one of the 23 previous episodes twice. I need some new episodes. So welcome back. If you're new, maybe you just accidentally stumbled in here, maybe you came intentionally, welcome. Pull up a chair, enjoy the conversation, and drop us a line in the comment section and let me know so that I can personally welcome you to Common Sense Choices. If you're a regular and you were part of those 23 episodes, those can be found obviously on YouTube, Facebook, but the homepage for all of those episodes is lindatoupin.com. Well, God has gifted you 168 hours this week. That's 10,080 minutes. And it came in a big box and it was a present. You opened it up and you got to choose how you spend every single minute and every single hour. And what you get from that is what you're actually getting out of your life. God calls that free will. Well, we also tell us that literally you will make 35,000 decisions today alone. No wonder when you lay your head on the pillow, you are tired. Well, I'm so glad that one of the choices was to click play and also to comment. Now, when you comment, your name goes into a drawing for free stuff. Who wants free stuff? I want free stuff. You want free stuff. So be sure to comment freely and often, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Those will get answered as well. And share. That is how we spread the good news and the common sense. So remember to comment and to share. Well, most of our business comes from lindatoupin.com. That's kind of our home base. Now, you're going to find me on my YouTube channel, Common Sense Choices. You're going to find me on Apple, Spotify, Facebook. But the very best way is to head on over to lindatoupin.com. Now, there, you're going to have an opportunity to sign up for our free concierge service. Again, who wants free? Over there, if you sign up, I will personally deliver every episode to you every Thursday night in your inbox. So you don't even have to think about me. It'll just magically appear. If you're operating from your computer, it's in the upper right-hand corner, the sign in button or the sign up button. And if you're operating from your phone, it's in the upper left-hand corner. So be sure and sign up for our concierge service. And while you're over at lindatoupin.com, there's a fun little button called Stuff I Didn't Know I Needed. Don't you just love going in stores and walking out with a bunch of stuff you didn't know you needed till you got there? It's kind of like Target. Anyway, I want you to right now, I want you to look at your refrigerator. Just look at your refrigerator for me. Does it have a magnet with our mantra on it? So what is our mantra? Well, look over behind my shoulder at a 7-foot piece of art. And that's the mantra that builds Common Sense Choices, the podcast. So say it with me. Many of you know it by heart. I am where I am by the choices I have made or I have allowed others to make for me. So let's say it with conviction. I am where I am by the choices I have made or allowed others to make for me. We don't live in a third world country. We live in the freest, most incredible country in the world, and you are making lots of choices every single day at your own free will. And so if you woke up this morning and you weren't excited about your life, don't blame your spouse. You married them. Don't blame your kids. Kids aren't born to fulfill you. And don't blame your boss or the coworkers you work with. You choose to go there. And especially today, like in today's climate, you could have a lot of different jobs. So that mantra builds our podcast. And so look at your refrigerator. Do you have a magnet on your refrigerator with the mantra? Look in your kitchen cabinet while you're in the kitchen. Look where you keep your coffee mugs. Do you have a coffee mug with the mantra on it? Now, head to your office or to a place in your house. If you're a school teacher, look in your classroom, look in your children's bedroom. Do you have the 8x8 canvas print? This is all about personal responsibility. This is all about making different choices. This is all about you being in charge of changing your life. So remember, you'll get something free from the store every week in a drawing, so be sure to comment and share. But I can't wait for you to welcome back to Common Sense Choices, Lena Edwards. Now, she is no stranger to this podcast. Her episode number 5, in case you're new, episode number 5, you can find it on lindatoupin.com. You can find it on YouTube under Common Sense Choices. Number 5 was 10 ways to improve your immune system. Yeah, children, COVID is here to stay. So we just need to start being personally responsible for our own immune system and making ourselves stronger. And so she talks about 10 ways to do that. Episode number 17, we got to know her on a more personal basis and how she segued from traditional medicine into functional and integrative medicine and into the field that she is today. She has an incredible Facebook group called From Barely Surviving to Absolutely Thriving. If you're not a member, please, 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 please go over there. She interacts with you over there, and there's a wealth of files over there that you could give yourself an education with. And then, of course, today is episode number 24. It is going to be hormone replacement therapy. So before I bring her on the screen, I'm going to tell you the story of how I met her, because it was in this realm of hormone replacement therapy that brought her into my life. It was 13 years ago. I was in my mid 50s. And can I just say, it was ugly. It was just ugly. In fact, I remember thinking at one time, well, if this is what the rest of my life is like, I'm not even interested. And that's a big statement for someone this positive, Pollyannish, happy Linda Toupin. I'm pretty sure everybody out there who can relate to what I was going through. I'd always been a slender person. Now I was gaining weight, especially in my middle. And it didn't matter how much good food I ate and how much I exercised, that would not come off. My daughter would even say, Mom, you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. Why is this not working? I had no energy. And it was worse than that. I had no creativity. I had no new thoughts. In fact, it was hard to grab a hold of a thought. There was this fog or this heaviness in my brain. Lack of sex drive, just felt blah. 2:00 in the afternoon, my cats would curl up in the sunshine on my floor in my office, and I just wanted to lay down there with them and take a nap. And the wake-up call for Linda Toupin was on June 30th of that year. I worked in a business where our year ended on June 30th. I'm a highly driven person, overachiever kind of girl. And big goals were going to be met that night. And at midnight, when the clock struck 12, I had missed my goal. And I heard myself, not just in my head, but speak the words out loud, oh, well. I don't know if you know me very well, but I'm not an oh, well kind of girl. And it scared me. I physically got frightened. And so I began to ask people in my circle, who has gone through what I'm going through and is doing this well? Who is aging well? And every single person that came back that knew someone who was aging well used the same words, bio-natural hormone replacement. Well, I had heard the term because Suzanne Summers had, I guess it was on Facebook or someplace at the time where I knew I'd heard the word before, didn't know anything about it. And so soon thereafter, I happened to be in Nashville, Tennessee, visiting a friend, and I knocked on her door. And as soon as she opened the door, I was like, whoa, girl, what are you doing? She looked happy. She looked energetic. She looked young. And she just looked like she did 20 years earlier. And she said, bio-natural hormone replacement. And I said, okay, somebody needs to sit me down and explain what this is, because clearly I'm hearing it from everyone. And you are like the walking model of it. And so I started by going to her doctor in Nashville, Tennessee, which was about a 5-hour drive for me at the time. And I started out with pellets, but there wasn't very much testing that went into it. I didn't know what I was dealing with at the time. And it worked so-so. And then one time it got messed up. And, once it's in your body, it's kind of in your body. You have to let it wear out. And I thought, well, I don't think I like this, because you can mess it up and it can be wrong. And so about the same time that was happening, I ran into another friend of mine up home, and she had fit the same description. She had been a leader in my company at one time. She had lost her leadership position. She had no energy, lethargic, no creativity, gained weight, felt blah, etc. And she looked wonderful. And I said, Jenny, you look great. I said, what are you doing? And she said, bio-natural hormone replacement. And I said, well, I tried that, but they got it all wrong on this one time. And she goes, do you know Dr. Lena Edwards? I said, no, should I? She said, yeah, she's actually in Lexington, which was only a 2-hour drive for me. And I said, okay, I will call her and I will make an appointment. And that appointment was what brought Lena into my life. And I'd never sat with a doctor that cared that much, that asked those kind of questions, that spent that much time, that like truly seemed to understand what I was going through. Then she sent me to LabCorp for 13 vials of blood, a saliva test, I think a sleep study. I remember the girl at LabCorp going, kind of whispering, "Are you a patient of Mayo Clinic?" And I said, "No, I'm a patient of Dr. Lena Edwards." And that would begin my 13-year journey with Lena and our friendship as we have today. I trust her with my life. And I don't know of any higher compliment. So would you please welcome to the screen my good friend, Dr. Lena Edwards.
Yeah, you always put me on the screen after you give me this glowing like introduction, and you get tears in my eyes, and then I have to make sure my mascara doesn't run, and I don't have a makeup person here. Linda, help. Thank you so much for having me again. I very much appreciate it.
How are things in hot Florida?
Hot, very hot, which isn't good for a perimenopausal girl who's having hot flashes because it's just hotter. Yeah.
Well, you told me before we came on screen, you go, "Oh my gosh, I'm going through all the things I've been treating women for the past few years."
I know, and I really consider myself to be an empathetic person, but you really can't explain what it's like to anyone who hasn't gone through it. It's just like with everything else, right? So anyway, so now I'm the walking
Well,
poster child for what I do.
well, our topic today is very singular. We talked about building our immune system back a year ago. Then we kind of did a broader thing. Today, we're only going to talk about what my introduction was about, which was hormone replacement theory. And I can tell you, because I've been talking about this now for 13 years, I cannot believe the myths, the misinformation out there just in the general public that I've heard. I can't even imagine what you've heard. And I keep wanting to go, that's not completely true, or you've got the wrong doctor. And so I thought, no better person to talk about this. And can we go ahead and spill the beans that in the future there's going to be a book just on this topic?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. For a variety of different reasons, some of which I will get into as we go through the discussion. Yes.
Well, let's just start at the beginning. I mean, you see this all the time. This is a part of your practice of what you do. So you just take us down the journey.
Well, let's see, 20 some, gosh, I'm getting old, 20 some years ago. I think I may have mentioned this before. The whole joy of practicing medicine just wasn't there because I just felt like a human Band-Aid. And I felt especially sort of helpless when I would work with patients, women who were going through perimenopause and menopause, and there was no solution for them. And initially, when women were having issues with their hormones, it was commonplace to give them hormone replacement therapy in the 1970s, because not only did regular hormones help with their symptoms, but it helped with osteoporosis prevention and dementia prevention and all of these other wonderful, great things. So, um, you know, when I was in practice, when I just entered practice, there was this big study that came out that was subsequently shown to be a flawed study, by the way, in 2001. And they did this great big study on thousands and thousands of women who were taking oral hormones from estrogen metabolites from horse urine. And sorry, last time I checked, we're not horses. And then an oral preparation, something called progestin, which is not the same thing as progesterone, which is what the body normally makes. So they were using in that study hormones that were being given in a way that aren't safe, in doses that aren't safe, and in forms that weren't even remotely close to the types of hormones our body actually make. And so they did this study, and then they found out so many years into it, they believed that there was an increased risk of breast cancer. So all of a sudden, all of the patients on the planet, at least the ones that live in the United States, and especially the ones that live in Lexington, Kentucky, got pulled off their hormones. And so they were having horrible issues, symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, all kinds of things. And so now they're being told they can't take hormones because hormones cause cancer. And there was no solution at the time because it was such a sudden finding and nobody had done any research to figure out, well, what else can they do? So, over the subsequent years, then it was things like, well, here, now you can take antidepressants. Okay, well, you're not sleeping. Here's some sleeping pills. Okay, well, now let's see. You're gaining weight. You've become pre diabetic. Let's give you some medication for that. And so the laundry list of prescription drugs just got bigger and bigger and bigger because women were being forced to stop hormones based on a study that in 2013, the authors of that study actually printed a reprint stating that the study was flawed. And the reason why the findings came out the way they did was because of the age of the people, the study population that they were using, the different pre-existing health issues that they had. So it isn't enough to just look at a study. People say all the time, one of the biggest questions I'm asked, well, I'm afraid to do hormones because they cause cancer. My doctor told me that hormones cause cancer. Well, I tell patients if hormones cause cancer, we would all be getting cancer when we're 25 because our hormones are really, really peaking at that point. It's a lot more complicated. The story's a lot more detailed. And there's a lot of misinformation, as you pointed out earlier, not just with the lay public, but within the medical community. Doctors still truly believe that hormones cause cancer. Now, depending on which kind of hormone, how you're giving it, how much you're giving, etc., yes, that's potentially true. But there are very, very good, safe, effective ways to deliver proper amounts of hormones to a woman to allow her to actually want to live her life. Because guess what? We get to spend the last third of our life, which is approximately 35 years, living in menopause. We don't go through menopause. I mean, I guess technically we do because then you get to be postmenopause, but really menopause is just the first year of postmenopause. The bottom line is your ovaries have checked out. They're not coming back. They still make a little bit of hormone, but they're never going to make as much hormone as they did when you were younger and everything was tighter and you were sharper, and the list goes on. I mean, obviously, our bodies change quite a bit, and those hormones do some really, really important things. Um, I'm also often asked, well, if the good Lord decided that we need to go into menopause and stay there forever, who are you to mess with that? Which is a very good question. The answer actually is, as an internist, I work with people, or I did work with people. Now I don't because I fixed them. They don't have chronic diseases anymore, in large part because of the hormone replacement. But before, I was working with diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, all of these issues. Well, the majority of the health issues that women develop happen to them when they go into menopause, actually. So there's a big wow, maybe those hormones are actually kind of important. And then there's also research showing that in women who have their ovaries surgically removed, so please, you don't have to have your ovaries taken out, please don't do it, that they have an increased risk of every single disease that you can name. Not only do they have an increased risk, but whatever disease they get happens sooner and it's more severe than in a woman who's in menopause but still has her ovaries. So the hormones do a lot of really, really important things outside of the fact that, our bodies, primarily we have them for reproduction. I mean, and that's what our bodies were intended for, technically. But now, guess what the average life expectancy of an American woman is? Do you know, Linda?
I would think in the late 70s.
83. 83. Guess what it was in the 1890s? It was 39. Okay. So I guess my passion about bioidentical hormone replacement therapy goes beyond just the symptoms. I mean, obviously I'm going through them. I get it. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the effects that these types of symptoms have on women's lives. But women are living longer and they're literally spending 35 years of their life in the Sahara Desert of hormones. And without those hormones, there are certain things that are just not going to work the way they're supposed to work anymore. And if you look, and I don't have time, and that's going to be part of what's in my book, talking about the hormones and what they do and the importance of not just the fact that they help with reproduction, but you're never going to sleep or lose weight without estrogen. They use progesterone to help regenerate nerve cells in the brain. I mean, these hormones do a lot of really important things, which is why every single cell in the body has receptors to these hormones, because they do a lot of other things, everything, literally. So, from my perspective, it's more about disease reversal and disease prevention, at least as important as fixing the symptoms that women suffer with needlessly, because there are solutions to those problems and they don't have to suffer. And that's why I get really irate and really passionate about it, because I can only imagine, having now going through this myself, if I didn't have the ability to correct my hormones the right way, how devastating an effect that would have on me and my life and what I do. So,
Well, I mean, and there's millions of women out there who can completely relate to absolutely everything you said. And, I have surrounded myself for 40 years with highly driven, successful women who do, quote, quote, all the right things, mentally, physically. I mean, they're on top of their game. But I have watched menopause and all of this destroy their careers, destroy their marriages. I remember once my husband actually complaining about, all the men in his circle were all complaining, had the same complaint about their wives, and 2 years later they were all divorced,
yep.
and a lot of it was directly attached to that. And so it does destroy your quality of life. You're still alive, but I remember thinking, Lena, if this is what it's going to look like for 30 years, I'm not interested. Like, I'm not interested in this at all. I'll figure something else out. So, where do you want to go next in this conversation? Because we could go on for hours. So,
we could. I think that the first thing I really want to point out is I want to make it clear that hormones are perfectly safe and life changing if they are prescribed by someone who knows what they're doing, and if they're properly dosed and monitored, given the right way, and monitored the right way along with everything else. So I think that's one point I want to make. And the reason I think it's important for those of you who aren't already suffering from the consequences of that, I mean, the rates of depression go up 4 times. Actually, 1 in every 10 perimenopausal and menopausal women considers actually suicide because of how much of a negative impact the symptoms have on your life. You can't think, you can't focus, you can't sleep. I'm probably preaching to the people that are already going through this or have been through this. And if you haven't, well, I'm going to hopefully help prevent you from ever having to go through this. But it's really not. I think that you need to be more educated on what the actual truth is, so that you're not scared to go ask the questions. Less than 7% of doctors will actually discuss menopause with their patients and solutions to menopause, because we're not trained in solutions anymore. But the point is, there are solutions. And so one of the things I wanted to discuss today is some of the ways that you can do it the right way, some do's and don'ts to things, that proper ways to do the hormones, ways to take the hormones, and talk about some of the other things that will impact what the body's going to do with your hormones when you put them in or on your body. So I think that that's kind of some of the things I wanted to focus on for the remainder of our talk.
all right, well, let's go. Let's go.
Okay. So basically, there's a term called bioidentical hormones, which basically means that if you were to take the structure of the hormone, it looks like a little puzzle kind of, and if you were to take your body's own estrogen or progesterone and put it next to the bioidentical hormone, they would look the same. So I basically tell patients it's like having the same key that fits into the same ignition for the car. Okay. Now, the difference between bioidentical hormones and stuff that comes from horses or progestin is you can put that key in the ignition, but the car is not going to start. Or if it starts, it's not going to take you where you want to go, and the ride's going to be really bumpy. So that's really the best way I can think of to explain the difference between bioidentical and non-bioidentical. A lot of people also use the term synthetic. Well, really, synthetic simply implies that it's made in a company somewhere, some manufacturing company. But actually, all of the estrogen pills, patches that you get from a regular pharmacy are bioidentical estrogen. They look exactly like our own estrogen. They're just made in a facility that makes other prescription medications. I think there's a falsehood that bioidentical means they're natural and they're made in a compounding pharmacy, but that's not necessarily the case. You can actually get bioidentical hormones from a regular pharmacy, but as a pill, for instance, it's not safe. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. So that's the basic difference between bioidentical and the conventional. Um, the other difference is that when you're prescribing bioidentical hormones, you can choose from whatever you want as far as how you're going to give a hormone, how much you're going to give, how often you're going to give. In the conventional medical world, well, unfortunately now, if you go in and say, I want some hormones, they'll say they cause cancer. Sorry, here's a prescription for Prozac. But if you were to go in and you found a doctor who was agreeable, they would say, okay, well, here's a prescription for Prempro. But if you don't have a uterus, they'll just give you plain estrogen pills. And they'll say you can only take these for the absolute minimum amount of time as possible because they're going to cause cancer. Now, when you give hormones that way, that's dangerous. So they are accurate in saying that you have something significant to worry about if you take these hormones, because those hormones are dangerous. And it's because they're being given as pills, and because what they're telling you is progesterone isn't. It's progestin, which is not bioidentical. It doesn't do anything that natural progesterone does. And just as a little segue, because this makes absolutely no sense to me, the same stuff that they claim cause cancer in menopausal women, they give to young women in the form of birth control pills. But for some reason, they don't have a problem giving them that way. So that has never made sense to me, because birth control pills they have oral estrogen and oral progestin, which is the very same stuff that they found was causing all kinds of other problems. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, maybe somebody else will understand the rationale there. Um, so that's a big, I think, a key that women need to understand the differences, because they'll say, well, I want to be on bioidenticals because they're safer. So here's the next point I want to make. Bioidentical hormones are not safer if they're being prescribed by someone who isn't giving them safely. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Estrogen as a pill, whether you picked it up from Walgreens or from your local compounding pharmacy, is never safe to put in your mouth, ever, ever, ever. It has all kinds of horrible side effects because of what it turns into once it goes through your stomach and your liver, and I won't get into the details, but swallowing estrogen is a very bad thing to do, bioidentical or not. The same is true for testosterone. And I still work with women whose doctors are putting them on oral testosterone, liver cancer, among other things. So, and it's in the package insert. So I'm not quite sure. Obviously, that's the only way they know how to prescribe hormones. And so that's how they do it. So oral estrogen, oral testosterone, always a no-no. When it comes to progesterone, this is another mistake I see people make a lot. Women that don't have a uterus, they'll get estrogen without the progesterone. Well, earlier I told you every single cell in the body has receptors to all the hormones, which include progesterone. So just because you don't have a uterus doesn't mean that the rest of your body still doesn't need progesterone. And oh, by the way, the same tissue that formed your uterus when you were growing in the womb forms your breasts, and you still have those most of the time. So, it's a problem. There's so much misinformation and so much like controversy, and it's being in large part actually fueled by the medical community, because a lot of women they're scared of hormones and they're not even considering touching them unless their doctor says it's okay, even though there's subsequent studies showing if you give hormones the right way, they're actually safe and they help prevent all kinds of diseases, from Alzheimer's disease to osteoporosis, heart disease, depression, anxiety, sleep apnea. I mean, you name it, you name it. And so I'm hoping at some point the pendulum will swing back. It looks like it's starting to swing back in this direction. The major issue now we have is that there are not very many people that are qualified to prescribe them. Uh, there's a definite demand for bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, and it's been there for a long time. And conventional practitioners have lost patients and continue to lose patients because they don't understand them. They dismiss the patient's concerns or questions about them. And so patients are having to seek elsewhere to find people who will prescribe hormones for them. That is becoming equally disastrous. And I know because I talk to women all the time, and I end up being the Clorox wipe trying to fix the huge mess that the last doctor made, trying to fix hormones when they didn't know what they were doing. This is especially true with pellets. And I can talk more about that in a moment. So we have a lot of people out there that, because there's no standardized course to go learn how to do bioidentical hormone replacement. There are several different entities that offer weekend courses or week-long courses or whatever. And people will go get their little diploma and, okay, well, I took 3 classes, I'm an expert now. And it takes a very long time. It takes a lot of understanding about the level of complexity of hormones. It's really, God made us beautifully sophisticated, but very complicated. And if it were as simple as, oh, your hormone is level, let's see, your testosterone low, let me just give you some testosterone. Oh, well, your estrogen's a little bit low, let me just give you some estrogen. That is going to backfire 100% of the time if the person that's doing that doesn't understand, okay, if a perimenopausal woman is still having periods, she doesn't need estrogen, okay? If a 40-year-old woman has no sex drive, it doesn't mean she needs testosterone. I've had patients who were put on testosterone and their levels were never even checked. And the other important thing, and I did a post on this earlier this week, is unless you're in menopause and you know the hormone levels are going to be low, if you do testing and hormone levels are oddly or disproportionately lower than they should be, or they're low, but it doesn't make sense that they're low, it requires further investigation. Because if you have a woman that you don't do your due diligence, I swear to you, this is going to be a story I put in my book. I recently started working with a woman who was starting to have symptoms of depression and low sex drive, but she was still having regular periods. She was in her 40s. She went to the doctor and they put a testosterone, really high dose testosterone pellet in her and gave her some progesterone pills, both bioidentical. Okay. And she did okay for a while, but then her symptoms came back. And so each subsequent time she would go in, they would just keep giving her more hormones, higher doses of pellets. Well, eventually she quit having her periods. She started having all these other problems. She started growing hair on her breasts. She started growing acne on her face. And all of a sudden, after she hadn't had periods for a while, because at this point she was in menopause, she started having bleeding. And guess what? What would you do if you had a patient who was on hormones, even if they're the right dose? If they're on hormones and they start bleeding, what do you think ought to be the first thing you would do? Just asking hypothetically. I know you're not a doctor, but what would you do?
I would stop.
There you go. I mean, thank you.
Stop.
All right. 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 But I actually reviewed this person's medical records. They didn't stop her hormones, but instead they did a complete hysterectomy on her. They took out her uterus and her ovaries. I get goosebumps when I think about this, without ever giving any sort of, wow, you think maybe the hormones are the problem? And so she ended up castrated, if you will, because the people that were doing her hormones messed her up. And then her conventional gynecologist didn't even consider the fact that that might have been the problem. So she lost her parts and they kept her on the same hormones, which makes no sense to me. But again, so this is the kind of stuff that I hear all the time, all kinds of nightmare stories about patients who are seeing people that don't know what they're doing, or are basing their treatment decisions on symptoms only without labs, or the wrong labs, or labs being done at the wrong time, um, hormones being given in the wrong ways and the wrong doses. And that's, I think, the biggest concern. It's not that hormones cause cancer. I think that the practitioners that don't know what they're doing are the ones that are causing the problem, not really the hormones. But
So I'm sitting here and I'm pretending I don't know you, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to turn. I don't know whether I can even, my, OBGYN won't even hardly talk to me. I don't even know how to find anybody qualified to do this. Like, that's what I'm thinking right now.
Right,
It's like,
right,
what do I do?
right. Well, and that's why I started my Facebook group. And that's why I'm writing this book, because women don't have a resource and they don't have enough knowledge to even know what questions to ask, or to know, if your doctor's getting ready to put you on something that's harmful. Unless you know, how do you know? So,
Right.
it's really about seeking the information. Women, unfortunately, for now, have to be really proactive about finding reliable places to get reliable, credible information, and then finding practitioners who are knowledgeable and experienced enough to know what they're doing. Um,
I
and
remember
so, go ahead.
I, I remember back on our previous interview, because you said I segued from trying to teach doctors to teaching the general public, the average woman, better questions to ask, because you're not getting anywhere by just trying to teach a doctor who's been doing the same thing same way for 40 years. It's better to go teach the women better questions to ask, which leads me to a different question. Is there are clinics popping up everywhere where you literally just go in. I knew that would get your reaction. Where you just go in. It's a hormone clinic. You go in and you get your pellet or you get your thing, and it costs a fortune. I was shocked to learn what people were paying versus what I pay, how little I pay for a hormone cream. Let's go down that path.
Yeah, why don't you just take a chalkboard and scratch your fingernails down it? That's easier for me to tolerate than having a conversation about these clinics. I am not a very, I'm a very passionate person, and sometimes I have to be really careful what I say because my passion sometimes gets the better of me. But uh, I understand some women have gone into these places and have come out with phenomenal results, and they're really, really happy. And I'm really glad to hear that. They are in the minority, though. There are a lot of patients. And again, it's not that a pellet is bad, but I am not like you. You're not like any of the other 1.8 billion menopausal women on the planet. So to think that you can create a protocol, and I've been asked to do this so many times and been offered a ridiculous amount of money to do it. And I'm like, I can't make a protocol because no two women are the same. Because it isn't just about putting the hormone in the body. What's the stress level? What's the gut health? Is she sleeping? What does she weigh? How many prescription drugs does she take? Does she go to the bathroom every day? Does she sleep? I mean, all of those things are going to affect a woman's hormones, both before menopause and after menopause. And and a lot of those things can actually make the symptoms worse, and a lot of those things can negate the beneficial effects of the hormones. But a lot of the times it's those things that are creating some of the hormone issues, especially in women before menopause. So they don't need a pellet. They need to be, working with someone who can work with them on all of these other things that are making their hormones unhappy with them. So for instance, women that smoke go into perimenopause earlier and their symptoms are more severe. Women that are overweight, same drill. So again, you have to understand all of the things that are happening, the environment in which the body's being placed before you ever touch a hormone. And then when you're doing the hormones, you have to understand that every woman's body's different, every woman's life is different. So you can't just pick from 3 or 4 doses of a pellet and shove them in and expect everybody to have the same outcome. I also have issues with, the way they do their testing. It's not right. The way that they check the hormone levels isn't correct. But they've been able to make it into protocols so that they can franchise it and they can make more money that way. And the people doing the work don't have to think because they just have a piece of paper that tells them what to do. And
Right.
that's the problem I have. And I have had so many patients on the receiving end of that kind of stuff that have ended up really, really messed up. And in some situations, some of the problems are irreversible. Enlargement of the clitoris, hoarsening of the voice, hysterectomies because of bleeding. Some of those things you can't reverse, even if you
Right.
don't do hormones ever again. So
Whoa.
it's be very, very, very cautious. The other problem with pellets, as you pointed out earlier, once they're in, they're in. And you've got to wait 3 to 6 months for whatever happens to get out. And the other thing that women need to be made aware of is hormones can turn into other hormones. So if you go into a clinic and so for instance, testosterone is turned into estrogen by our body. Okay. So if you walk into a clinic and they check your testosterone and it's low, and they don't try to figure out why it's low, and they just put some testosterone in you or on you, if your testosterone was low because it was already turning into too much estrogen, then what do you think giving you more testosterone is going to do? It's going to turn into more estrogen, and you're going to start bleeding, and you're going to start having abnormal mammograms. And so I think I've made my point. I think your your other point is well taken, and it's much more difficult to answer. It's where do people go to find
Yes.
someone
Yes.
who can do this safely? I'm still looking. I know that there are people out there. I know, I mean, I've worked with thousands of women all over the country, um, and there are, it's hard to find. Sometimes you can contact a local compounding pharmacy, and they can sometimes give some good recommendations. Uh, but they also have to be careful because they're usually servicing multiple different doctors. So they have to be careful to recommend specific ones. So they may just say, okay, well, here's a list of 5 or 6 of them, go see what you think. Reviews are often pretty good, but honestly, even online reviews, you have to be skeptical of. I didn't even know you could do this. My husband told me that people are hiring companies to have people write reviews for them when there aren't even actually their patients, but it's just to get a bunch of positive reviews from people. I guess I'm silly, stupid when it comes to that stuff, but I didn't know you could do that. So
They
sometimes even
hire people to protest in marches, so it only makes sense that
oh,
you
yes,
would
it
hire
makes
people
sense,
to
right?
do online
So
reviews.
you can't even go by online testimonials anymore. I think word of mouth is probably one of the best ways to find the right practitioner. Getting onto to groups like your group, and you have me on, or getting into my Facebook group, or into other credible groups where people are exchanging information. And I know sometimes people will find positions that way, but it's an uphill battle because it's still not well. It's not embraced by the conventional medical world, and the whole bioidentical hormone replacement arena is still relatively new to a lot of practitioners, so they're kind of dabbling in it. And that's one of the
Well,
reasons I want to write this book.
it is true what you just said about finding people is because for the past probably 10 to 15 years, I've been talking to audiences about this whenever I would do workshops around the nation. And I noticed, like in the past 5 to 7 years, when I start talking about this in an audience, there will be people who say, I live in, Tucson, Arizona. This is who you go to. Oh, I live in Denver. This is who you go to.
Right,
You
right,
know, I live in South Chicago. This is who you go to. So it is the word of mouth. It's like women finally find the right people, but you've got to be in a group of people to find the
right,
girl who raises her hand and goes, "Oh my gosh, I love my doctor, and here's why I love her or him because of that."
right.
It's not anything they find on the internet. None of these
No,
people found these people on the internet. They found them by word of mouth and somebody having a positive result. I mean, that's
yes,
how I found you. It was like
yes,
Jenny said, you got to go see her because she knows what she's doing. And then I told thousands of people what you were doing, and then they went and found people in their cities that were close to
right,
them, and that's how it's going to happen.
right. That's right. I mean, even in books that are written, like Suzanne Summers, you brought her up, and she has a listing in her book, but those people paid to get put there. So, that's not really a really good place to look either. But you're right. I think that's the best way to go about trying to find someone is talk to your fellow women, sisters, mothers, friends, coworkers, find out what they're doing, find out where they went. That's probably the best way, I think, at this point.
Well, and it goes back to the old saying that my audience has heard me say a million times: only take advice from people with whom you would trade places. So if
Mhm.
somebody's giving you parental advice and you're like, dude, I don't know that I need to take
Right,
parental advice from you.
right,
Okay. Or, what you say makes sense. I mean, you have to look at that person and think, okay, they're doing that right. And it's interesting. our speaker next week is from Stronger Life, which is a brand new company here in Lexington, Kentucky that's working. It's all about optimal aging. It's kind of like CrossFit, but for over 55. And I don't want to put it in the category because I don't want someone to say, well, I could never do CrossFit. It's not like that. But on one of their presentations, they were talking about, okay, these are the 3 key elements as you age: diet, exercise, and hormones. Those are your 3 things, and you have to do them all. Not just, you can't just exercise or you can't just take a hormone. It all is connected.
That's true. That's very, very true. And I have a lot of people that come to me because they're doing all the right things and they still can't sleep and they still can't lose weight and all of these other things we're discussing. And those things, no supplement on the planet, not even the one I created, will take the place of what the ovaries used to do when they were doing it the right way. Nothing's going to take the place of that. So there are certain things that, and some women don't suffer. They don't have to do hormones. But for the majority of women, it's a really a quality of life issue, and it's a disease prevention issue. So,
Right.
So that's why I'm
Well,
passionate about it.
Well, and this is kind of on the personal side. In the past year, for the first time in 13 years, I went off my hormones and it was my decision, for a few months. And I mean, I immediately got back a DEXA scan that was not good, and I saw a great decline in my bone density. And I was like, oh my God. And the first thing you said is, okay, we got to get back to one of the elements and all of that. But you brought up the Adrenafem supplement that you created. Let's kind of wind this up by talking a little bit about why did you create this? And I love it when you say, don't buy this and think it's going to solve all your problems. I love that. So tell them a little bit about this if they haven't been introduced to it.
Sure. I created that product about 6 years ago, and it was really out of necessity because I was working with a lot of patients that had issues with their female hormones, issues with their stress hormones, issues with their immune system, et cetera. And I was working also with some patients who were in perimenopause that maybe didn't need hormones. So from my perspective, that supplement is really meant to help women, well, all stressed out women, because stress wrecks your hormones regardless of your age. And also to help sort of balance female hormones in women that are maybe premenopausal, perimenopausal, and aren't quite ready for hormones, because there are some things in there that are actually some of the things that the natural hormones are derived from. So it's really meant to help balance the female hormones, the stress hormones. If women are having female hormone problems from stress hormone issues, to help with that type of thing, and also to help with stress maintenance, stress management. There's herbal preparations in that supplement that have been shown, like rhodiola. It's been studied, shown to help improve stamina, endurance, mood. Ashwagandha helps with 50,000 different things. So, cancer, disease prevention, heart disease prevention, bone health, brain health. So I tried to make it as comprehensive as possible. So it does do a lot of different things, but it is not a miracle in a bottle, and nothing is. If you eat Twinkies every day or you drink 3 glasses of wine every night, no supplement is going to make you feel better. But and I'm just trying to be completely honest that no supplement is going to fix everything without it going into a body that's receiving, nourishment and love from all these other sources, right? So
Well, and I know I appreciate those comments. I know my audience appreciates that comments, because you never hear that when someone's promoting a supplement. You never hear the creator of the supplement going, "Don't take this and think all your problems are going away." This is a supplement, but it is interesting because I really didn't think I had any of the stress female hormone issues that it addresses. And when I started taking it, like the first day, I thought, "Oh, this is kind of what the world looks like." That fog in your brain, literally, that like eases back in. You don't even realize it. And then the days I don't take it, like I know in the middle of the afternoon there's going to be a lull, and when I take it, there's no lull. So that's my own testimonial. But anyway, you can get 15% off your second bottle if you leave a testimonial over at adrenalogic.com. All right. Any last parting words for my audience today? I mean, you've got to go over to her Facebook page. That's the first thing you got to do, and go join from barely surviving to absolutely thriving. There's no Facebook page even close to those words. Like when it comes up, it's there. So you will not have any trouble finding it. And you will read for hours just the comments and what she's talking about and the files. You could get a college class over there. So that and then you can also contact Dr. Edwards at adrenallogic.com. There's a contact button at the bottom of the page, right, Lena?
Yes. What I will recommend for people though is, because of HIPAA rules and medical legal constraints, I can't answer personal medical questions and give, individual medical advice. I've been getting, when I've been on the podcast before, a lot of people will send me those kinds of questions, and I can't answer those types of questions. But absolutely, people are free to message me. Instant message through the Facebook group is probably one of the best ways. Also, they can email adrenalogics.com is also fine. But I just wanted to make that comment. And as far as a parting thought, for the women out there that are suffering, it's completely unnecessary. And I'm talking about suffering because of hormonal issues. It's needless suffering that can be fixed if you find the right person who knows what they're doing. And I think you should take that step, because you've only got one life, and unless you are proactively trying to make the choices and find the right people to help you fix your body that no longer cooperates, it's just not. You're going to kind of stay that way, and I just think it's sad because it's not necessary.
A thought for your Facebook group is maybe to make a post and say, if you found me in another city, in other words, another doctor who thinks like me, operates like me, tests like me, would you put the name of that person and the city that person's in? That might be helpful to the audience as well, because it is happening. It is happening across America. It's just a very slow process. But I think the grassroots movement of women telling other women what you just said, you don't have to suffer like this, but you can't just go to the doctor and think that something magical is going to happen. You're going to have to educate yourself first and know the right things to talk about, because doctors can be intimidating and they're all in a rush. And it's like, oh, I don't want to take their time because they're in a rush. It's like, that's the wrong doctor. Like if you're in an office and they're rushing you, you're in the wrong place to start with.
I agree. Thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate that. I'm going to go fill up my coffee cup now.
All right, you guys. Well, we're excited about our fall season. Next, we're going to be doing 2 episodes a month this fall. And so in 2 weeks, you're going to meet Dr. Dustin Jones, the co-founder of Stronger Life, an optimal aging program that he started here in Lexington, Kentucky. But he also talks and will address people in home health, physical therapy, in that realm of medicine. He actually is teaching classes and courses for you. He travels around the nation, but he has online courses as well. And a lot of it is kind of pushing back on some conventional stuff that maybe because he's finding much different results, you guys, from the women that he's working with. And I'm one of those women down at Stronger Life. So if you're in the Lexington area, check it out. You will be blown away what those women and men in their 70s and 80s do down there every single day. And it's like, holy cow. I am so impressed by the quality of life these people are living. So you guys, thank you so very, very much. And remember, head on over to lindatupin.com. You get a free magnet this month for every order that you placed. And check out curtis.pink, our sponsor, as well at adrenallogic.com. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.